Welcome to a Reddit and Read video now. Police officers of Reddit. What are some laws that you feel uncomfortable enforcing because you disagree with them? Worked for a city station in Australia that fully expected that we would give tickets to people for being homeless or begging for money. These tickets were $600 at least. I pretty much refused to give them out because it felt barbaric. Like homeless people didn't already have it rough enough without getting a $600 ticket, which if they didn't pay would turn into a court case warrant. How were they gonna pay it anyway? The only point to it seemed to be to kick them while they were down. Plus, begging for money is a summary offense here, not an indictable offense. And we have discretion for summary offenses, meaning the superior officers wanted us to be jackasses for the sake of it. I was in charge of training new recruits at the time, and I thought it was better to demonstrate compassion to them and teach them what services were available to the homeless and when. How to get them fast-tracked into emergency housing and what places would offer free food. I transitioned out of that station because I was tired of getting shit for not giving people shit. My dad is an officer, and in my state, the police, state patrol officers do not have a minimum quota for tickets they have to write. In fact, it is illegal here for a superior officer to tell the lower-ranking officer to write so many tickets. I have a point, I promise. Anyways, a while ago one of my dad's co-workers was being told by a superior officer, "You're not writing enough tickets. You need to write more tickets." Officer replied, "Yes, sir," and wrote the superior officer a ticket for telling him to write more tickets. It's the best story I've ever heard from my dad about his job. I know it sounds like the most fake thing in the world, but I swear it's true. I have never arrested anyone for weed, nor would I unless forced to. I have never been faced with it, but as long as it isn't in everyone's face, I would never charge for prostitution. Obligatory, not a cop. 911 call taker. Any kind of petty non-emergency call where someone isn't directly bothering anyone are the most obnoxious calls to have to put in for us. If you call in to report teenagers skating, people smoking weed, or a party going on at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, there is almost a 90% chance at least one person is insulting you for it. If it's not us, it's the dispatchers or the police themselves. Riding bikes on pavements. If there's pedestrians on it, then yes, use the road. But if it's completely empty, why not use it? It's a lot safer than riding on the road. In the grand Reddit tradition of not quite answering the question right, I dated a girl whose father was a cop. He'd always tell us where the asshole cops were patrolling on any given night we were going out. Hey, stay the fuck out of Whitefish tonight, guys. Good dude. Psycho daughter, but a good dude. Hope he's well. Back in the day when I was the popo in the state prisons, I was expected to write up people that had fresh tattoos. That's the stupidest thing ever. I just pulled them to the side and told them not to let me see it again and made them mop the day. Rumasier. Possession of cannabis for personal use. Such a waste of time and money to prosecute and not in the public interest in the slightest. UK cop, by the way. Just as an example, a buddy of mine's dad is pretty high up in his local police force in Canada. Anyways, they stopped enforcing possession laws regarding marijuana years before legalization. It was just too much trouble. A waste of time. Still go after dealers, but anyone who happened to be possessing when booked got a chance to chuck it or the like. It was just a waste of time to the cops there. An equally good question, I hope. What petty laws have you enforced just because the person wasn't listening to reason? Whaling is illegal in Oklahoma. I won't write a ticket if they kill a whale. Open liquor laws. You wanna have a beer while you float down the river? Have it. Gonna throw that beer bottle over the side into the stream? Damn right, I'm gonna write you up for littering. And then the open liquor ticket is a fuck you for being a selfish ass. Edit. As was pointed out, I should clarify. Floating downstream on an inflatable tube. Not drinking while operating a boat. That still gets you charges. Not too long ago I rolled into a parking lot and was sitting behind an empty vehicle parked in the fire lane. Got out and was about to write a ticket for it when the owner walked out in his pizza delivery uniform with his hot bag. Told me he just ran inside to make his delivery. As a former pizza delivery driver, I decided to leave it at that and let him on his way. Someone saw that I let him go and called the department to lodge a complaint. I didn't get yelled at, but I was told to be more careful when making decisions like that. Not a cop, but stop at the lights. Cop car next to me told my mate in the passenger seat that I should be changing my tires when I get the chance, as they are looking bald. I mean, cops will literally pick your car out in any given day, but most cops are alright. Sometimes we don't take notice of our tires unless someone points it out. I was driving with my dad through the middle of nowhere, Kansas, going about 91 on the highway. Because we were visiting colleges and we were running late to our first visit. Some cop pulled me over, and when he saw that it was my dad and I, and when we explained what the trip was for, he just gave us a warning. He had said that if I was with my friends he would have given me a ticket because he thought I would have been showboating, but because I was with my dad and given the nature of our trip, he decided to just let us off this time. Nicest cop I've ever met. 10 out of 10 would get pulled over again. Nice try, Chief. A friend of mine is a cop in Rhode Island. This is what he said. Sadly, DUIs. Because in Rhode Island it's a huge process and time-consuming hassle. Sometimes you just want to go home. I would ask them to call a friend or family member to pick them up. One time a dude argued with me and I kept trying to convince him to get a ride. He's like, I'm fine to drive. He got back in his car, so I had to bust him for a DUI after trying to give him so many chances. This person has 4 dogs, but you're only allowed 3. Okay. Quote. Am officer, not police. I got in trouble for not arresting people who were intoxicated in public. I would find people passed out, drunk on the ground. I would wake them up and sit with them until a loved one or taxi came to get them easier. I didn't see the harm. They were harmless and just needed to go home. Department told me that I was not able to make those kind of decisions and that I needed to arrest the individuals. Body cameras made it so that the department got their way. Isn't anal sex illegal in some states? A colleague of mine was in the Air Force, where he ended up being put on policing guard duty during basic. A guy who was with him was really not cut out for this and was trying his best to get dismissed from boot camp. So much that the guy began to refuse drinking water and attempt suicide in the Texas heat to plead insanity and get out. While they were working out details on what to do with him, he got out on suicide watch. My colleague had the unpleasant job, per instructions, to wake this poor guy every half an hour at night and give him water, and his superior monitored this. The guy basically was begging my colleague to stop because he just wanted to get some sleep. Made my colleague feel like shit, but rules were rules in basic. Not a cop, but similar Leo vein. Worked for TSA. I died a little inside every time I confiscated a serrated butter knife. Rolling on the floor, laughing face with rolling eyes. Cops in my town carry nickels and feed the meters instead of taking the time to write tickets. I worked for a time in criminal investigations with our office. I was not a sworn employee, but a civilian one, probably at one of the lowest rungs in the ladder. One day the captain said that the sheriff wanted us to go through all Hispanic people currently in jail and determine if their criminal backgrounds designated them to be turned over to ICE for deportation investigation. As I found out, the majority of them were arranged for deportation. regardless of their immigration status. Essentially, I had been given the responsibility of telling the higher-ups who should be allowed to stay in the country and who shouldn't be. They gave me some parameters, but the majority of these people were in for minor drug, alcohol, or other lesser infractions, and histories reflected the same. It was the only time I ever said no to doing a job for the agency, and my career came to an end for unrelated reasons not long after. I was working security for a low-income housing facility. The people that ran this facility had a little scam they did where they would turn off the fobs of tenants so tenants couldn't open the front door. It was $35 to get the fob turned back on. There were 400 tenants at this complex. At any one time, a quarter of the fobs might be turned off. I was working the front desk, and if a tenant had a turned-off fob I wasn't supposed to let them in, I would let them in anyway. I got fired. Was an Air Force cop. Hated taking cell phones from people from the flight line. It was an arrest offense and could lose ranks and stuff. Every single cop has their phone on them on the flight line. I guarantee it. My best bud, known him 20 years, and his entire family are cops. Dad, mom, sister, and 2 brothers. All cops. Anyways, I have dinner with them from time to time, and I recall one time his brother discussing having to go monitor a protest with all the other cops in their riot gear. I was fascinated that every person, cops, at the table had the same reaction of hating protests for different reasons. One person said it was boring and you have to stand all day. One person said it sucks when the people you're protecting start yelling at you. His mom, who was a dispatcher, said it diminishes responsibility because all the cops were tied up at the protest and that means less patrols elsewhere, etc. Bottom line is, found out cops hate protests. A buddy of mine used to be a cop and said he never got anyone for weed because it's too much hassle and it'll be legal soon anyway. I've had a few good experiences with reasonable cops over the years. One time I was rolling into a small town in western NY in a snowstorm and had a radar detector on the dash. I see a cop coming the other way and beep. I look down and I'm going like 32 in a 25. I look in the mirror and he flips around and I just pulled over and waited for him to catch up. He gets out and says, "You were going a little fast back there. Why'd ya pull over?" Quote. I said, "Roads are slick. Didn't want ya to have to catch up to me." He goes back and runs my plate. Comes back and bullshits with me for a couple and says, "You have a good day getting out of this snow." In Canada, when an alcoholic is placed on conditions not to consume alcohol, it feels like a real dick move to charge them with breaching conditions if the only offense they're committing is the consumption breach. On the other hand, it makes for a great additional charge you can slap on assholes who are, e.g., beating their wives while drunk. Thanks for watching a Reddit and Read video. Make sure to like and subscribe for new content.